Hey, welcome back. Here we are, Wednesday, hump day, which in the old days means we're halfway through the week. But these are not like the old days. Hope everybody's doing okay out there. Hope you got your assignments in. I've graded, a third of them. So far, so good. From what I'm seeing, you'll get better at it. If you hand them in late, you lose points. But I kept it open till midnight, and I'll do that again this week too. Anyway, because I'm going to sign a paper right now. Go to the assignments, and you'll see it. I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to lecture about it. Because we're still talking about this week is our theater week, and if none of you have seen a play or know what I'm talking about, it's something that takes part in our lives since the beginning of mankind. They've been doing plays, presentations, getting up and speaking from ancient Greece till now. Things have changed now in the pandemic. Theater is essentially closed down for a while because they don't want audiences. But people are finding new ways to do it online. And so there's all sorts of things happening online. I want to talk about the importance of why theater, why this desire to tell our story. And that's all it is, simply that. And from time began, we've been sitting around the campfires telling our stories. And sometimes we tell it by acting out what we did that day. Oh, we were hunting today, so you act it out. And that became a way of storytelling that became codified into essentially later on would become a play. People would write things down. Ancient Greeks did the Greek tragedies. I hope one day you guys read those things because they're incredible to read, and they're not that hard to read, by the way. Electra, so many of them. Oedipus Rex, wonderful theater. And that's where Shakespeare got a lot of his influences from. Anyway, so we've been telling these stories as human beings since the beginning of our existence. This need to tell our story to others, and others watch it, and they comment on it. Or they don't like it. In the old days, they just throw rotten vegetables up at the actors if they don't like it. Hopefully they don't do that now. Now you just give them a thumb down review on Yelp or something. Anyway, but today we're going to focus instead of on ancient theater. I'm going to bring it up to modern times, and there's a reason for that. We're in the middle of a cultural shift right now. And I'm not talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. And there's a huge cultural shift happening in this country and really all over the world right now. But it started here with people questioning racism. And so I want to talk today about African American playwrights in America and their contributions to our American story, and how important their contributions were and continue to be. And they're modern playwrights, meaning they all wrote in the 20th century. Some of them wrote further past the 20th century. Some of them are still writing. And it's important to understand and give credit to these people to tell their stories, and whether it makes people uncomfortable or not. And that's the truth. A lot of times is uncomfortable. So all these plays I'm going to talk about today had very popular mixed audiences, white audiences, black audiences of all ethnics were gravitated towards these plays because these plays are talking about fundamental human truth, and that transcends all color, all religion, all the crap that we put up barriers from us to somebody else. These writers were that good, and that's the importance of theater and playwrights, is to tell our story in a way that we all relate to it and get something out of it. It's always, but they're not preaching to us. We don't want to be preached to, but we want to also be educated and maybe see something we're not used to seeing, a culture we're not used to seeing. Maybe we didn't live that way. Maybe we need to see it though. And so these playwrights brought that to the theater for audience to see. And the three I'm going to talk about today were successful doing that in a time where it wasn't that easy. The very first one was Lorraine Hansberry, who, as a very young woman, wrote a play, essentially a biographical play, autobiographical, I should say, about, it's called Raisin in the Sun, and 1959. In a time in America where we still had Jim Crow. Jim Crow was essentially an antiquated law of the land in some states where you could legally lynch an African American person for no apparent reason. So when she wrote this, even though she was writing from the safety of New York, there was still abundant segregation and racism throughout the country. And so she wrote this play about an African American family who are trying to move out of the so-called ghetto into a predominantly white neighborhood and the suburbs. And it had never been done before. And the problems that arise from African Americans moving into a white community and what happens. And the play was hugely successful. It was the first time an African American playwright's play played on Broadway, which was is the pinnacle of playwriting. Is your play is on Broadway in New York. Maybe some of you have been to New York. I hope in your time that you do go to New York City. Now's not a good time, but when theaters open up again, and see a play, see an off-Broadway play, see a Broadway play, and sit back and try to absorb it all. And so when she produced this play in 1959, it was a very meaningful piece of work. They made it into a movie later on. Starred Sidney Poitier, who also starred in the play on Broadway, and it set a precedent. It showed another side to the coin that white America hadn't seen or even thought about, and they needed to see it. The tragedy of Lorraine was that she went on to write other things, but she died very young, 34 years old, of cancer, not too long after her play was produced. Anyway, so she's an important element in African American theater in this country, hugely important. And they just recently uncovered another play she had written, different, and it's had never been produced before, and they're going to produce it. So they're still looking at her legacy. That's how important it is. And it was cut short because of her early death. Anyway, the other playwright I want you to look at, a guy named August Wilson. He too passed away from cancer 10 years ago or so. And he is a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. As far as I know, the first African American to win the Pulitzer for best drama. And he wrote his legacy is he took each decade of the 20th century, 1900, 1910, 1920, 30, 40, you get it. And he wrote a play and put it in the historical content of that decade. Each decade of the 20th century. And he wrote 10 of these plays. And it took him a lot of years to do it. The last play hadn't been done on Broadway before he died of cancer at 60 years old, and played on Broadway after his death. But his most famous plays, and the one he won the Pulitzer for, was called Fences. He also did The Piano Lesson and Joe Turner's Come and Gone, and many, many more that are still being performed to this day, regionally around the country, New York, all over the world. He was from Seattle, and his voice is an important voice because it speaks to everybody. Not just African Americans, but anybody can relate to these stories who has any human dealings with the human condition or families, the dynamic of each family. Fences was made into a movie. Maybe you saw it, maybe heard of it. Denzel Washington directed it. Came out a couple years ago. He did an excellent version of it. And it's essentially about a African American garbage collector. That's what they did in the Depression, folks. There wasn't many opportunities for African Americans in this country, and collecting garbage was one of them. And so this gentleman is a garbage collector, and he's provided for his family. He's made a life. He brings home the bacon. He's got them a house, and he likes to drink at night. And in the meantime, he has an affair with somebody down the street. So he's cheating on his wife. He has a son who he doesn't understand, and a wife who's fiercely loyal to both he and the son. But the wife, when she finds out she's been cheated on, things change. The son is going out for a football scholarship, but therein lies the dramatic component to the play. Should he go out for this scholarship or shouldn't he? And the father and son don't agree on it. In the meantime, the father, the reason it's called Fences, is building a fence in his backyard. Simple as that. And the fence represents, metaphorically speaking, the father cutting himself off from others. And it's not just cutting himself off from his neighbors, but it's also cutting himself off from his family. So the fence is a metaphor for fencing himself in. August Wilson had to write in a hurry. He had to do 10 plays, each depicting something in each decade of the 20th century. Now, it wasn't an easy task, he chose, but he did finish it. He did get the job done before he died. And now they have the August Wilson Theater in New York named after him. That's how important his work continues. Because as long as people keep continuing to do the plays, it will resonate to our human condition. The third playwright I want to talk about is actually alive. Suzan-Lori Parks is the first African-American woman to ever win a Pulitzer for her play called Top Dog, Underdog. And her plays are not necessarily done in a naturalistic, realistic manner. They're like rituals. And they're thought-provoking and dramatic and very theatrical. And she's still writing. She writes for TV and movies too. That's where the real money is, folks, writing for movies. She wrote a screenplay for Steve Spielberg. and she's written TV. That's how you make the money in this country as a writer. And her plays are provocative. They always are challenging, and she does not give you the simple look at life. She gives a complicated depiction of African American life in this country with a modern take on it. She's still a fairly young woman. I think she's 56 or so, and she's still writing. But she broke ground with her revolutionary plays, and she's still breaking ground. And so that's the other woman that I want you to take a look at. On your assignment, which I'm going to put on the assignments today, pick one of these three playwrights and write your paper on them. 3 pages, 2 pages isn't enough. I want you guys to do 3 pages. Go to the extra distance. I'll put this all in the assignments. And I don't want you to do a copy and paste Wikipedia job. I want you to research the lives of these people, these artists, these great writers. Look at some of their YouTube clips, their interviews. There's plenty on there. Look at some of their clips from their plays, from their movies. That's fine. And so you'll have a feeling for what they accomplished and how important they are in the canon of American theater. And so this week, I know you were looking at Shakespeare. I want you also to do discussion. I'll assign that too. In the discussion, I'll give you a week to discuss this. I want you guys to discuss that production of Hamlet I suggested you watch on YouTube. Peter Brooks's Hamlet, done very minimal sets with an African American. He's not an African American. I think he's a British actor playing Hamlet. Does it make a difference? Does his color of his skin mean anything? Should it mean anything? Hamlet is a tragedy because everybody dies. And the definition of tragedy is bad things happen to good people. And there's some bad people in Hamlet, by the way, and there's some good things. There's some good people, and yet they end up dead or in a bad way. That's what makes it a tragedy. The tragedy in Macbeth, that's why it's called a tragedy. Macbeth is actually, he's a warrior, but he's not evil, but his wife is rather evil, and she convinces him to possibly murder his way into getting the throne. And so he does, and now he has done bad things. But essentially, what makes it tragic is he was a good person, a loyal person, a warrior, very successful general, and he's brought down by the evil deeds he does. So, same thing with Romeo and Juliet. It's called the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. 2 lovers start off. Their love cannot happen because their families are at war with each other, and they both essentially commit suicide over this love. They're good people, end up badly. So anyway, that's what the assignment is this week. I'm going to post that on the discussion. I want you to look as much. I'm not saying you have to suffer through the whole, and maybe it is suffering for you. You don't have to watch the whole production of Hamlet. It's 3 hours long, I believe. Take notes. Just tell me what you think, what you're seeing in the discussion. Does it have any effect of you at all? Are you getting it at all? You might have to do a bit of research on what Hamlet's really about. You can get a thumbnail sketch of it really quick. Just do some research and discuss it online this week. And your paper, I'm assigning it today. I'll put it on the assignments. Write about one of these African American writers, a research paper. And here's another aspect. If you choose it, you go see one of their plays. They're online, most of them. If you want to write a critical analysis of one of the plays you might see that one of these playwrights wrote, and most of them are on YouTube, you could do that. If you don't do that, do the research paper based on one of these great writers. And these are transitory times we're living through. Not only are we coming through this virus, and it's long from over, folks, the pandemic is still on. Don't go bunching up in crowds yet. We're fortunate in a way to be in a county that doesn't have very many cases. Not so. You go to LA or any other place where there's a large population. So before you rush off to the beach, think about the pandemic is still going. Stay safe, wear your face mask, do whatever, keep the social distance up. We're not out of the woods yet. And this week, because of all the rioting and the protests throughout the country, between the police and American citizens, it's a good time to look at our relationship between essentially the races. It's important. We're in an important time in our history, and we should write about it, and we should look at it. So I don't want to just write about old stuff right now, meaning from Shakespeare's time. Let's bring it up to the modern time right now. That's the beauty of it. That's why the syllabus says the subject to change. So I want to come into contemporary times. We'll probably do it throughout the course too on other subjects, but this week it's playwrights. I will post this on assignments, look at the due dates. I will have it due at midnight on Monday. So you'll have 5 days to do your research and write the paper. And please do not do just a copy and paste from Wikipedia. Put some thought into it. Look at it. Put something original into it. I could tell when it's a copy and paste job. Believe me, I could tell. I've read hundreds and hundreds of papers by now. Please put some work into it. I had some interesting comments. I'm not done with the last paper course. I still have about 10 more to grade. Hopefully I'll finish that today or tomorrow. And do look at my comments and follow. If I have a comment saying it needs help or you didn't do this, didn't do that, do follow it. If your paper's short this week, I didn't knock any points off. This is our first paper. But from now on, you need to do the minimum pages. Go push. I keep going. Push forward. Go. These are important things we're writing about. Important people, and they've had books written about them. You could possibly write 3 pages about it. Okay, and that's it for now. So go do your best. Look at some of the stuff. I'll post this all on the assignment and the announcements. You'll see it all. And so refer back to that often and have patience on the grading. I'm getting it done. With that said, stay safe. Keep learning. I know what it was. Someone wrote in their paper about Martin Luther. I learned something. I never knew about this person. Yeah, that's what education's all about. You're not going to know a lot of people, and that's how we learn. And if you knew all this stuff, I don't know it all either, folks. Hard to believe, I know. I'm still learning myself. And we're in this thing together. Be that as it may, good luck on your papers. Write strong, write honest, write the truth. See you next time.